Lita, hello. Can you hear me? Lita.
Are you talking to me?
Hey, there you are. I didn't see you had your headphones on. What you doing over there?
Sorry, I was listening to a book on Audible.
On Audible? No way. Really?
Yeah.
That is so perfect because actually I have big news. We have a new sponsor of the podcast. Guess who?
I don't know who.
Audible.
Oh my God.
Yes.
That is so cool.
Yes. And I know you're a big fan of Audible.
I listen to books all the time and it's my favorite way to keep up on my reading list.
You mean your listening list.
Right.
And of course you mean you love to listen to Audible all the time when you're not listening to the podcast, right?
Well, yes, of course. Inspired Action Podcast first and then lots and lots of books on Audible.
All right. So I'm glad you got that right. So What are you listening to right now?
You mean before you interrupted me?
Yes. I mean, I'm sorry. Before I interrupt you, what book are you reading? I mean, listening to.
Well, if you might remember in Pod 22, we talked about Brene Brown's book, The Power of Vulnerability.
Yes, I love that book.
She just released a new book that I'm so excited to get into called Dare to Lead.
Well, guess what?
What?
Since we have this new deal with Audible, anyone who listens to our podcast can listen to that book for free.
What? How?
Well, it's just not, actually, it's not even that, it's any book, not just that book. And it's super, super easy. Just go to audibletrial, TRIAL.com, /inspired action, and you sign up and you get 30 days, you get a free book, you get to go and do whatever you want for a whole month.
So wait a minute. So they get a free book and a month to check it out. It makes me wish I could sign up again.
Well, I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just saying go to audibletrial.com, /inspired action, and get your free book today if you don't already have one.
And if you want to listen to what I was just listening to, just go sign up.
Yep. So here it is again, audibletrial.com, /, no special effects. That's me. Yes, I know it's hard to believe. Get your free audio book. And that's about it. I just wanted to tell you that.
Is that it? Can I go back to my book now?
Yes. Can I plug in and listen to with you? Welcome to the Inspired Action Podcast. This is where we have motivational, inspiring conversations and interviews that we hope you'll enjoy listening to. If you're interested in creating more balance in your life, understanding your 5-element energetic nature, finding the path of greatest ease,
or releasing the baggage of this lifetime and discovering ancient alchemy that can help you fly in your life, join us and other inspired actioneers on this alchemical, transformational journey.
Welcome back, Inspired Actioneers. This is episode 24. I'm Jay, and I'm here with my co-host, Lita Herman.
Welcome back, everyone.
Hey, how you doing today, Lita?
I'm doing great.
That's great. You know, in our last podcast, we talked about the Inspired Action Retreat we had on Cape Cod, Mass. It was a whole 4 days. It was really awesome. And we talked how you can do a little Inspired Action mini retreat at home. It's not too mini, but it's small. We talked about the sacred fire and this vision quest, again, with the mini, like a short version of this vision quest where you ask your oracle, which is one of the 5 spirits of the 5 elements, a question. So you ask yourself a question. You follow the instructions that we did, and you could maybe get an answer. If you haven't listened to that episode, that pod, I suggest you go back, number 23, check it out. If you have any questions before you listen to this one, you might want to just send us an audio question or an email question.
Yes, you can send either to questions@inspiredactionpodcast.com. So this week, we're going to talk about the 5 elements again. And we've had a lot of requests from listeners to take a bit of a deeper dive and into the 5 elements. And that's what we did in our Inspired Action Retreat as well.
Yeah, we really want people to understand the 5 elements a little bit more and not just think of it more like energy in motion at work, not just intellectually, because energy and energetics is alive, it's moving, it's everywhere.
Yes, and I've spent the last 20 years morphing myself into all 5 elements.
It sounds painful.
Well, in a way it was. It's hard work. So we decided to film me doing some of my energetic impersonations, so to speak, so we can show you the energetics in real life.
Yeah, because we're listening to a podcast, so this is a visual thing. When we're at the workshop, I just set up a camera, and if you've never seen Lita before, she's very entertaining and she's funny. So this is just a short video, and we're going to put it in our Facebook group. We're going to post that tonight, and I'll put a link in the show notes if you're used to getting our stuff in the show notes, but it's going to be for the Facebook group to watch. So if you're not a member of the Facebook group, it's a great time to join.
Yes. So you can go to our Inspired Action Podcast page in Facebook, and there you will see a link to the group.
Yeah. So join us. We're really, we get so many questions every week, but we're trying to get people to direct the questions into the group. So we're working on that as well.
And anyway, so I think this is a fun way to see the elements in action, like doing these kinds of videos. And of course, you're listening, so you're hearing our voices, which is also important in the 5 elements. So many people are interested in the 5 elements in general. So wherever we go, people want to know more about them.
Yeah, they want to know, can you help me figure out my top 3? What are my top 3? What do you think I am? And I always say, it doesn't matter what I think and what Lita thinks, it's what you think.
Yeah, and remember at our retreat, some people took a while to figure out what it was, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
it was kind of fun actually to see people really taking the time to
work it out.
Yeah, with themselves. Yeah, it was really great. So,
and I like when you said that the most important thing is that you agree with what you think you are, not someone else telling you.
That's you can read books, you can read our books, you can go to workshops, you can listen to the podcast, but only you really know if you start to ask yourself the questions what the answer is.
Yeah. So this podcast will give you a little more on the 5 elements. So should I get started?
Yeah, let's go. Let's do it. Bring it on.
So the first thing is, and we've said this before, you're born with an intrinsic nature that gives you your own unique perspective on life. And so it's different from many other people you see in the world. So your perspective and your temperament is always at work. And so you see things in the world and you say, I don't like that. And I do like it this way, and I like to do it my way.
I like to do it my way.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm like conditioned. It's like Frank Sinatra just comes out of me. And I know that was the worst Frank Sinatra ever impersonation.
Well, it's appropriate because Frank Sinatra was wood too,
Yay.
Jay.
I did it my way.
Well, now you've sung, and
there
so
go.
since you
Get
have to
out
sing
of the
in every
way.
podcast, this is great.
That sounds like you just, that's it. Out of the way. Don't do it again.
Okay.
Don't do it again.
Enough.
Sorry. We might edit that out.
We're still going to have to do the GoFundMe for your voice lesson.
Hey.
Okay.
Hey.
All right. So anyway, let's get back to the 5 elements.
Meow. She did it her way, which is not my way.
Okay. All right. Well, it's natural to have conflict in the world.
There you go.
Yeah. And if I'm wood and someone else is fire, I might think my way's better, clearly, right?
Just don't tell them that. But judgment is inherent in the world because we have these different natures all around us.
Yeah. And let's just simplify it. If you just go to yin and yang, let's not talk about 5 elements, just 2 things, yin and yang. You can say everyone has a more yin nature or a more yang nature, and some are in the middle. So if you're very yin, then you're likely to be more metal or water. And you might have a judgment against yangness. You might say, stop being so out in the world. Be more yin like me.
Or if you're more yang, like water fire, you might tell them to stop being so lazy butt there and just stop laying around. Get out and do something. Let's go do stuff.
Yes. Well, yin and yang have an inherent judgment in the number 2. So there's no judgment in the number 1, which represents wholeness. Everybody is all love with the number 1. It's no judgment. But as soon as you break it down into the number 2, that some of us are this way and some of us are that way, it's inherent in our nature to appreciate the things that are like us and have a lot of difficulty with the things that are not like us.
Yeah, and then when you break it into the 5 elements, it's a little more subtle. Sometimes there are similarities, but they're a little different. I gravitate over here with these people and I kind of move away from the things I don't like. It seems natural. Energy is natural. Things can be in flux. It can be slightly varied or extremely different.
Yeah, and if you believe that there is a good and a bad in the world, then you're going to have judgmentalness or moralistic views. And that's a Confucian view of the world in the Chinese philosophy. Confucius believed you should work really hard to be a good member of society. And he espoused these values that are all about being a good member of society, which really wasn't very good for the individual in the community, but great for the community as a whole.
But the Taoists, they had a different opinion. They believed you have more of a spontaneous nature and all is good. So it's amoral, meaning there's no moral to apply or to judge, no judgment. So you can look at the 5 elements, more from that point of view.
Yeah, it's not about immoral. It's amoral, meaning no need for morals. So, a good example would be a mother that we know. She began to understand the differences between the 5 elements, and she's earth and her daughter is water. So she realized one day that it's okay that her daughter is lazing around on the couch all day, the lazy butt. And she stopped comparing her to others in the family, including herself. And so her daughter had her own energetics, which are very different from her mother's. And so her judgment got released about that. And she saw that there are different natures in the world, and her way is neither good nor bad. And so she began to see the daughter and her actions or lack of actions in a whole new light.
It's really hard to parent from that more judgmental way.
Yeah. And what is really great is when a parent gets us. It's rare. As a child, we are often told our natures are wrong. It's very common that a parent might be different than you, and you're brought up being told you're bad, 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 and just trying to figure out a way to manifest your true nature.
Yeah, or be quiet, you're too loud, or you're too quiet, or get out there and lead and be a winner, winner, winner. Why aren't you being more of that? Those are the kind of things that are judgmental.
Yeah.
And if you go back to the Taoist point of view, your element is your true nature, but you can be more than that. You can be spontaneous even beyond your nature.
Yes, that's it. So you don't need to think of your elemental nature as limiting you to being one element. The last thing we want is for you to think it's that we're defining you. No one can put you in a box. That's for sure.
No, the anti-box thing. That's right. I think I'm the last one who wants to be defined. Once I realized that I have all 5 elemental energies in myself, I stopped thinking that elements were limiting me to just being like, say, wood.
Yeah.
I don't consider myself just wood.
Well, and you particularly want to be limitless, like that movie Limitless.
Yeah, definitely. Mine is taking the pill, but definitely, I strive to be that every day. I try to connect with people on all the different elements, so learning to be all 5 really helped me expand, just like that guy in Limitless. It just goes beyond what, just trying to talk to people. I really tried to connect with people.
But before any of us can do that, the first step is to learn what is our true nature, because you can't really go beyond your nature if you don't understand what your natural or default behavior is.
And I really think that's one of the reasons why I love to talk about the 5 elements. It's kind of a starting place for the self-cultivation. If you don't understand that's, who you are energetically, then you don't know where to move on from there. So it's like a starting point. You have to start somewhere. So learning your first 3 elements is a great place to start, to asking yourself, what, Lita?
Better questions.
Better questions. Yes.
And obviously, you and I, Jay, we gravitate towards the Taoist view of having a spontaneous nature. And so that means, of course, the Confucius way is bad, bad, bad. Well,
no, you can't say
just
bad.
Kidding.
And you're being judgmental. You're being a moralist and thus Confucianist. Confucianistic.
No. Right. So seriously, I really like the word spontaneous, because if you really surrender to it is what it is and there is no bad, you can live a more spontaneous life and surrender yourself to life itself. And in stage 6 of alchemy, which is what we call the flying stage in alchemy, it's living completely spontaneously, which is very hard to do, but it is a great way to live life.
When I am working on different things, I used to be the queen of the to-do list. I actually had lists for my list. But, if you're in stage 6, no matter how long you're in it, if you're in it for a long time or a short time, you literally don't need a to-do list anymore, because at any given moment, the next step is like divinely guided for you. Life is just moving along the way it's supposed to. It flows. It's kind of, spontaneous. That's the best word for it, like you said. So I don't try to force myself to do anything that does not feel good or inspired.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little more. For example, if I have a dentist appointment at 10 o'clock and at 9:30, I realize I need to get in the car and drive. I have a 10 o'clock appointment. It just happens. And it's scary and crazy to be to-do list less.
To-do list less. I like that.
But that's the goal of stage 6.
Yeah. I think that, you'd hardly recognize me these days. I rarely use to-do lists. I'm much more trusting in the universe, but I was really like list crazy. But, I kind of still use my journal. And, we talked about this before too, about the whole dentist appointment. And when we talked about Kramer and the time.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about trusting in the universe. And that brings us back to the Wu Wei, which is really the main thread of this podcast, but I still use my journal. And I guess you could say, if I really examined it, I do have a loose list that guides me when I need it, or if I really need to focus on something.
And you can't really live a Wu Wei spontaneous life until you begin to understand what you do every day by default without thinking about it. And so like having that loose list makes a lot of sense because those are your inspired ideas.
Definitely.
And so you're already doing all these things without ever thinking about them, and it's your nature, but we want you to expand that.
Yeah, and keep going and just kind of trust in the universe that you're making all the right decisions.
Mm-hmm. Now, when I started learning about the 5 elements, I had teachers who talked a lot. It was like blah, 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 blah.
Blah, 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 blah. Charlie Brown head opens up. Yeah. But no disrespect.
No disrespect. But I did find the 5 elements very confusing at first. But now I know that it's way easier than how I learned it. When I started to show people what it looks like, for example, the walking, and then people started getting it much faster. And I want you to practice walking like that and feeling it in your bodies.
Yeah. Before we jump into the walks, and you do this great thing when we were at the retreat where you show people what the energies look like. Before we do the walk, can we do the plants first?
Yes.
I love how you do the plants. And we're going to have the video, like we said, in the Facebook group for the walking and stuff. But this is this really cool thing that Lita does that I don't know anyone else who does at all. I've never met anyone who does this plant thing. It's really cool.
So I'm going to try to give you a visual picture through words of this podcast, which is blah, 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 blah. But, you're going to have to use your imagination because I'm going to show you what it looks like through my words. Every plant is one of the 5 elements, just like humans. And so let's start with an acorn. So an acorn is very small and very compact. So I would get down on the ground and make myself a little ball to show you.
Like a baby acorn.
An acorn. And so think of that acorn as full of potential. And it has the potential of a giant oak tree packed into a little tiny nut. And nothing is going to stop it from being that big oak tree.
So are we starting with yin or yang?
We are starting with extreme yin. So if we go back to some of the earlier podcasts, we talked a lot about yin and how when it's not moving and it's quiet, it's actually building energy so that at just the right moment, like a volcano, just the right time, it's going to explode into growth.
So that's the water element, correct?
Yes. And so it's like I'm going to be an oak tree, but it's not time yet. It's not quite the right time, even though I feel the spring air coming. Wait, it's not time. And there's more and more anticipation and more condensed energy. And there's a crescendo building up before there is an actual movement, a volcano about to erupt of energy. But even with all that energy, I have to wait because if I miscalculate, I will grow too soon and the spring snows will kill me before I even get started. So I have to be patient, even though I'm about to explode with anticipation. And it's life or death, getting this timing right. No one can tell me I'm being lazy or to get my butt moving because I know when it's the right time. I have to trust with a capital T, and I can know when it's the exact right moment to start growing. So I wait, and then bam, I start to grow.
Boy, that's a lot for a little acorn.
You didn't know that was going through that acorn's mind.
Yeah, so at that moment, they have that little acorns having that moment there. They become the wood element.
Yes, as soon as the bam and the start growing is happening, we can just call the little acorn Bam Bam.
Bam Bam. Bam Bam's ready to go. Wow, Bam Bam's got a lot going on.
So as soon as the little acorn becomes the wood element, then it becomes a sprout. And it's not, sprouts don't actually look very strong, but boy, it is strong. It can grow through the hard winter ground. It's stubborn and it's strong enough to grow through the cement. And if that's the only option, that's what it's going to do. And it's looking for the most direct way, up and out. And so if you see how plants grow, they literally grow up and then they shoot out their little leaves and
arms
twigs
and branches.
And then they go up like a punch in the air, up. So you can imagine punching up into the air as being very wood. And then it just keeps growing up, out.
And then go on to summer.
Yes. So the next element is the flower. So you can think of a rose or some peony or something really big and beautiful.
Which is the fire energy.
Yes, it's the fire element. And so that plant is not going up anymore. It is expanding outward and it's opening itself. So we talked a lot in the beginning about how fire is vulnerable. Think about this flower, this bud, and now it has to open itself up to the whole universe and show its beauty, its amazing beauty.
It's vulnerability.
And it's a little shy.
Yeah.
And it kind of looks around, maybe it peeks its little petal out and it sees that all the other flowers have already bloomed, and am I going to be as beautiful as them? And maybe they're a different color than me. And oh my God, what if I'm the only purple flower in a field of flowers? Oh no. And I want to bloom. So I take my little petal and I peek out and I look at all the flowers around and I go, oh, I want to be as beautiful as them. They're already blooming, but they're all yellow and I'm purple. Oh no, what am I going to do? I might not be so pretty as them, but I have to somehow like look up at the sun and feel the warmth and go, okay, I'll just do it. I'll be brave enough to bloom and be as beautiful as I possibly can be and receive all the warmth and love that the sun is shining down on me.
And then
that's the fire element. So let's move into the next element. So that's earth. And so we're going to think of an apricot tree. And so an apricot tree, it goes through a blooming phase, but then in the late summer, it has all of its branches full with fruit, laden with all of this abundance to give to all the animals and people and everyone around them who come by. And that giving, that sort of slightly weighed down, laden with so much goodness, wanting to give that goodness to the world, wanting to envelop everyone with the sweetness of those apricots. And everyone is getting sustenance off of this tree.
You really like apricots.
Yeah. Everyone is just, filled with this wonderful sweetness that the earth people give to the world. So that would be the apricot tree.
That's earth energy. And then we move through the next cycle.
And then we go into autumn and fall and the metal element. We did talk about the leaf and the metal element. And as you may recall, the leaf is this wonderful, it has this wonderful life of being attached to the mother tree, being a part of the mother tree. And then one day it turns 18 and the winds come and blow and it's time to leave mother tree.
Leave the nest.
Or
the tree.
And if it's had a very healthy leaf growing life, it's going to be fine leaving the tree because it's excited. It's going to have this wind come and it's going to get to what I like to call fly a magic carpet ride. And this is what life's about. You get to leave that tree and go wherever you want to go, do whatever you want to do, spontaneously moving this way and that way. And you're not looking back and feeling bereft that you left Mother Tree because you had a good life and you're just looking forward and enjoying going this way and that way, not really attaching to all the wonderful experiences you're having, always ready for the next one. And just in this light and easy way, and then slowly but surely, the little leaf lands on the ground.
The little leaf named Shirley.
And then you're in water again.
Get back to the water.
Back to the water element. The leaf goes back to the ground and we start incubating a new form, a new being. So all of that energy begins to amass again. And whether it's an acorn or some other plant, it's going to spend the winter gestating and creating new life.
Wow, that was just very inspiring to hear you say that. So we have this little video, it's short, that we took at the workshop. We'll also put that video on the plants on the Facebook group. So if you want to check that out, go to the Facebook group the next day or two and it'll be up there. I'll also put a link of that into the show notes.
I think that's great. And so I think the homework today is, if you choose to accept it,
yeah, we could think about how you feel. How about that? I don't know how to explain it. How do you view yourself if you were a plant in the world?
How do you view yourself? Yes, yes.
How's that?
Yes. And how do you move through the world?
Yes.
Are you like moving like someone waiting and then suddenly bursting into action all the time? Or are you more constantly like pushing forward and
busting
going
through obstacles?
Yeah. Or are you more like displaying your beauty to the world and sort of expressive and outward, or maybe very shy at the same time?
Shy or vulnerable, yes. Or are you hugging the world? You're carrying earth energy.
Yes.
Like always trying to bring people together and solve all their problems, or trying to listen. Yes.
I always say also like the honeysuckle tree, how the smell envelops you.
Yes. So are you going through the world like that as this earth energy?
Or are you floating from place to place like the metal element and just allowing that to happen? Or maybe clinging too tightly to your mama tree could also be it. And so if you think about all these different ways of being, I think it's good to think about the plants and how they are growing and moving through the world.
Sure. Maybe we'll have a discussion in the Facebook group with that as well. Or you could also email us if you want. So that's a great place to end this podcast right now. And next time we're going to do more fun stuff. We're going to do the 5-element walks and the voices.
Yes, and even the smells.
Yes, we'll talk about smells. We'll maybe talk about the eyes. We'll talk about some different characteristics that you can help you, again, identify some of your own 5 elements with the order that they're in, the stack up.
And let's remind everyone to email us your questions, either voice memo or you can send us an old school email. We're okay with either.
Yes, we're definitely okay either way. And that would be questions@inspiredactionpodcast.com.
Yes, and check out the Facebook group. You can go to Inspired Action Podcast, which is our page, and from there you'll find the Facebook group.
Right, so go out and be the plants and the energy that you are meant to be.
Yes.
You've been listening to the Inspired Action Podcast, and you've reached the end. Woohoo! Woohoo! Why not celebrate a little bit and click that subscribe button right there. We love having you with us on this journey, and we want it to continue.
You can also rate and review this podcast, and if you have already, thank you so much. We read all reviews, and your reviews help other people find this podcast as well. You can also be a part of this podcast yourself by submitting a voice recording message and emailing it to us at lita@inspiredactionpodcast.com or jay@inspiredactionpodcast.com.
And if you want, you can join our Facebook group or follow us on Instagram.
Join us next week for another Inspired Action conversation. And thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening, and remember to hug the dog.